Constitutional Convention is held in 1838, and a new Constitution is written that uses the word white in it. You know, things like jury privileges and legal rights and right for public education and obviously voting. Those rights are taken away from African Americans in the state. So when you couple all these things, again, the rewriting of the Constitution in the 30s, what you have then is this competition between abolitionists in the North and pro-slavery people, but whether being from the North or the South. That's your chronology of the Underground Railroad and why I use it as a political movement. I have other things that perhaps could cite this. Also showing it as public. Look at the second document from Frederick Douglass's map. Printed in 1845, I have never approved of the very public manner, Frederick Douglass, I've never approved of the very public manner in which some of our Western friends from Ohio have conducted what they call the Underground Railroad, but which I think by their open declarations has been made most emphatically the Upperground Railroad, out in the open, public. The next document comes from 1854. A newspaper in Chatham. Fugitives from Southern injustice are coming thick and fast. The Underground Railroad never before did so large a business as it is doing now. The Vigilance Committee have their hands full, and all they want is the pecuniary means, money, to meet the demands made upon them. This is a matter that, of course, cannot be made subject of much public remark. A word to the wise is sufficient. The members of this acting committee, that's another phrase for the Vigilance Committee, which is the Underground Railroad. The members of this Underground Railroad Committee are William Still, 31 North 5th Street, Nathaniel W. D.P., 334 South Street, Jacob C. White, 100 Old York Road, Passmore Williamson, who lives on the southwest corner of 7th and Arch Streets. Any money placed in the hands of either of these gentlemen or forwarded to Charles Weiss, who lives in the corner of 5th and Market, who is the treasurer of the Underground Railroad, will be secure of faith. So, of course, this is public. These men are asking for money to fund the Underground Railroad operation in Philadelphia. And not only that, they publish their addresses. So that's not secret. Okay, and that's an open defiance. And that's saying, okay, Southerners, pick up a newspaper and see what we're doing. In fact, see where we're sending money or where we live. That's open defiance. And you can see that more so in the next document, which is written by William Howard Day when he lived in Cleveland. 1854, the quarterly report of the business of the Underground Railroad from Cleveland for the past 3 months has been such as to increase the confidence of all parties connected therewith. The number of passengers which passed over the road, the number of slaves escaping who passed with the help of abolitionists, there's 176. He's reporting the number of fugitives or runaway slaves that his Underground Railroad operation has helped in the last quarter of the year. Receipts from the road from all sources is $300, $309. Cash on hand, $19.30. Monthly subscribers to this committee, so those who fund through subscriptions from May 9th to August 9th in that quarter. We have paid out $59.37, for which we have received a large sum of money, $35,000, according to the way American people buy and sell God's image in the southern states. And we therefore resolve that as a committee, as an underground operation of men, never to take down our flag while the Underground Railroad car shall move on invisibly, for God is on our side. And obviously, the reference to the Almighty is something that Dr. King always did as well. Both men were preachers. You know, but here is a document of William Day reporting money raised, money spent, and what it equals to. You know, $35,000 in this document to rescue 176 fugitives in God's image. You know, again, reporting addresses, reporting fundraising efforts, and all that is to mock the South. And then you look at your last document, which is published here in Harrisburg. It's a letter. This is not a newspaper article. This is a letter. It's sent from the president of Harrisburg's Underground Railroad operation, and his name was Joseph Bustle. Bustle initially was born in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Underground Railroad sent him to Harrisburg. And who ran the Underground Railroad in Philadelphia, one of the people there was William Still, who he writes this letter to. Sent him as an agent to go to Harrisburg to organize that movement. It needed to be organized. It needed structure to be successful. So Joseph Bustle goes to Harrisburg, and here in 1856, he starts the operation. So let's take a look at the letter he writes. in March of 1856. He says, "Friend Still," William Still, "I suppose this you have seen, the most 5 large and 3 small packages that I sent by way of Reading." And it's the reference to the going Reading Railroad, heading through Reading to Philadelphia, consisting of 3 men and women and children. They arrived here this morning at 8:30 in the morning, and then they left at roughly 3:20, 20 minutes past 3. You will please send me any information likely to prove interesting about them. Lately, we have formed a society here called the Fugitive Aid Society, right? Every Underground Railroad operation had its own name. This was the name for Harrisburg's. Okay. "This is our first case," he says in 1856, "and I hope it will prove entirely successful. When you write, please inform me what signs or symbols you make use of in your dispatches and any other information in relation to the operation of the Underground Railroad." He continues, "Our reason for sending by the Reading Road was to gain time. It is expected the owners will be in town this afternoon." So they sent him on a train. "And by this road, we gained 5 hours' time, which is a matter of much importance, as you know. Sincerely, Joseph Bustle from Philadelphia." Now, here's the significance. When you look at documents like this and you study the stories of these 2 men I speak about, I think William Howard Day appears as the quintessential example of this Genesis generation of civil rights workers. When you start something from scratch, something that didn't once exist, was in shambles, but yet you create something magnificent out of it. William Day took a movement that was broken, and he turned it into a political struggle that has existed for more than 100 years after his death. William Day died in December 3rd, 1900, having lived through roughly 3 eras. He lived through King Cotton, born in the King Cotton era, lived through abolition, the Civil War, Reconstruction is an era, and lived through the period of post-Reconstruction and the rise of Jim Crow, and then de facto segregation in the North, the return of de jure segregation in the South. His baton was passed on to many other people after his death. Countless others, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the founder of the NAACP, who actually died the day before Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech, or promissory note speech. And as Dr. King is heading to the podium, you know, the word about W.E.B. Du Bois' death is going through the crowd. Du Bois passed the baton on to an NAACP lawyer, Charles Hamilton Houston, who ultimately became the first African-American editor of the Harvard Law Review, became the dean of the law school at Howard, and starts the long road to the Brown v. Topeka Board of Education case by ultimately taking to court the University of Maryland and Missouri's law schools because black students wanted to enroll and they refused on account of race. And he won those cases. Who then passed the baton on to one of his students, Thurgood Marshall, who became the first African-American Supreme Court Justice in 1967. You know, who passed the baton on to A. Philip Randolph, an African-American labor leader who planned the Jobs and Freedom March on Washington in 1963. Who then passed the baton on to Dr. King, you know, whose words and actions we study and celebrate every year. Now, both men, Dr. King and William Day, were at the centers of their communities. They both worked for the poor first. But not everything between the 2 men are strikingly comparable. Dr. King died at the young age of 39, having been assassinated. William Howard Day died at 75. He died from complications that he suffered from a stroke. Dr. King worked mainly in churches, but in communities of the South, whereas William Howard Day spent most of his time in northern cities. However, the 2 men possess something very unique, something that I call an empathy aptitude, meaning that they had the ability to see themselves in other people. I think we all need to encompass this empathy aptitude. I think we need to see ourselves in other people, especially people who are different. If Dr. King could love his jailer, and if William Howard Day could love the militiaman who tried to kill him when he was registering black voters in Wilmington, Delaware, then I think it's easy for us to love each other. We can have compassion for those who struggle economically. We can have compassion for those who perhaps don't respect and appreciate school as much as all of us do. You know, for whatever reason, perhaps they don't have the example at home. Perhaps they have to work instead of getting involved in an extracurricular activity or play a sport. We can have empathy for those who have healthcare needs. We can have empathy for those who are simply different. Black and white, or someone from an urban area or someone from a rural area, a lawyer, a teacher, someone who speaks English, someone who speaks Spanish. I think we have empathy for all people. And I think the lives of these two men teach us collectively this message. And that's why we celebrate Martin Luther King. So those are my comments there.